Torment Tides of Numenera is a pretty difficult game for me to talk about, and it's not just down to the title. In fact, if you hadn't noticed, I'm actually pretty good at the title. Numenera, Tides of Numenera. See, it's pretty easy. No, what's difficult is that I love the idea of it. It's a really narrative-driven RPG. It's a role-playing game in which you don't actually need to kill a single person, and it's all driven by and revolves around decisions and interactions with other people, which can have a ripple effect throughout the game. My difficulty is that I rarely find myself sinking dozens of hours into an RPG at the best of times, and this is a game that really forces you to pay attention. It needs you to read and take in as much detail as you possibly can, think, and then use all of that bottled up information to help make your decisions. So, getting dropped into the game nearly 2/3 of the way through, as I have been here, that really doesn't help me. But on the plus side, In Exile gave me a bit of a cheat sheet, and I got to chat to other people as they played and as I played, and got some pointers, and yeah, over the course of a couple of hours I really started to get into it. This is a classically styled computer role-playing game. In fact, it's a spiritual successor to Planescape Torment, which has such an incredible reputation alongside the likes of Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale. That subgenre of RPG fell out of favour a little bit after the turn of the century, but with the rise of Kickstarter a couple of years ago, it's allowed these kinds of games to make a comeback and find their audience and show that there are people that do still want this kind of game. Generally, PCs have been the initial target for these, but with publisher support, Techland in this particular instance, Tides of Numenera is coming to console as well. So if you've wanted that kind of gaming on your console, it's here. With story and decision making at its core, you are obviously expecting some kind of morality system within the game, and you wouldn't be wrong. These do in fact take the form of 5 coloured tides that the title refers to, however they're not simple poles like good or evil, and each of the 5 colours can relate to several different things. So indigo might mean justice, but it could also mean compromise and acting in the interests of the greater good. Blue is reasoning, but if you even just show some insight into a situation, that can also add to your blue tide. While red is passion, emotion and action, and so obviously it has more of a hint of violence and combat as well. How your tides change will give you an indication of your decision making and will come to form the last Castoffs legacy. This game has you playing as something of a blank slate to start off with. You are the last Castoff, a body that was used by a god that has been cheating death for thousands of years, but every time it takes on a new form, it also discards its previous form, and that form develops a mind of its own. So you have something of a blank slate to start playing with, and as you make decisions and your tides change, this comes to form the last Castoff's legacy, and it influences the world around you as well as your character's abilities. A key part to determining your legacy will obviously be in the dialogue options, but it can also come within the crisis system, and this is a fascinating little twist which I really liked about the game. It gives you this pressure cooker situation and asks you to solve it somehow. It's entirely up to you, really. In the background you're seeing a confrontation between mutants and the guards of the Memovera, and as I stumble upon this, I could have reacted in any number of different ways. As it is, I decided to try and diffuse the situation, using each of my characters in turn to talk to the leaders of both sides and try to discover what had caused this situation and find a way to try and prevent the violence. Using the skills of persuasion and reasoning and a little bit of luck within the action system, I managed to do just that. However, I could just as easily have looked at it and decided that the rule of law needed to be upheld and I should side with the guards and kill the mutants. Alternatively, it could be that the extortion racket that the guards are perpetrating needed to come to an end, and so I could incite violence on that side as well. Combat itself feels like fairly standard fare for a turn-based RPG and allows you to really consider your moves as a consequence. My one complaint, and it might just be my unfamiliarity with the system, would be that I couldn't point my characters in a certain direction to try and prevent flanking moves from the enemy. It's simple and effective combat really. However, within this there are still opportunities for the tide system to play out. And the story itself is just constantly asking you to make decisions and question every action. How much do you value the life of a remorseless murderer? Do you decide to sacrifice her to the moor to open up a new area, or do you try and find a different way? How do you convince a scientist studying the bloom that their painful experiments on this living city made out of seemingly flesh, sinew and sphincters that he needs to stop, or he will face death from its inhabitants? And when a human's consciousness has been hollowed out of their body to act as a mindless translator for another race, do you put her out of her unknowing misery? Is euthanasia an option that you're willing to take in that case? Many of these are quite tough, but obviously they're just going to relate to your own personal decisions, your own personal experience. But sometimes your decisions do have unintended consequences that can often lead to someone else's death. Going into Tides of Numenera, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect, but over the course of a couple of slightly bewildered hours, I must admit, I did start to get into it. Certainly the overarching story was still very obtuse to me, but within this area, many smaller stories unfolded for me, and I enjoyed making what I felt was the right call each time. Or, just starting a fight because I needed to capture a bit of footage of combat. What I didn't expect, though, is that it can actually be pretty funny sometimes, and I laughed at some of the absurdist humour and some of the characterisation that you come across, such as being able to mislead and confuse and befuddle one of your more simple-minded party members. This game won't be for everyone, with the sheer density of its story and its classic RPG stylings probably putting a fair few people off, but if you love nothing more than diving into a flowing narrative and making tough decisions, then this is definitely a game for you. Just the fact that the combat is an aside, that you don't need to fight people and can find a way through each situation talking to them instead, I think that's incredibly powerful. And I'm sure that this game, just like its predecessor, will be on many people's lists for best storytelling at the end of this year. Right, that is your lot for this video, and we would love it if you clicked like and subscribe, as always. So do that, then come back, watch more videos of ours, and visit us on the6thAxis.com. Essentially, don't be a stranger, and we will hopefully catch you next time. Goodbye!